If you care about your privacy and you want to prevent government overreach and intrusion into your private lives, please watch the whole of this video and pay attention, because who on earth do they think they are kidding when they put out headlines like this? And with great respect, this is in The Independent, The Telegraph, and I've seen it in other places. They say, public backs super ID card, which could be reused to report potholes, according to Tony Blair's think tank. Bearing in mind, of course, that it was Tony Blair's government that tried to set up these ID cards in 2009 with a compulsory ID card which didn't work. They give all sorts of reasons why they say it's a good thing, which I'll come back to in a moment, but it's not even been out an hour. My own poll here, if I refresh the page now, it has now received just shy of 3,000 votes in 48 minutes. 96% say no, absolutely not. And you might have seen this petition here, which is going up as we speak, with 118,000 signatures saying, do not introduce digital ID cards. Suffice to say, it is not a popular move, and yet they're trying to sell you otherwise. They're trying to sell you that it's going to save money, it's going to prevent migration. There's a great little entertaining video by, an interview with Yvette Cooper, which I'll show you in a minute, which really begs the question, do they really know what they're talking about? We'll come back to that in a minute. First of all, if you enjoy this brutally honest analysis of what's going on in the law and the politics lately, please do subscribe to the channel. I'll be very grateful for that. Let's get to what they are really talking about here. They say, you understand, this is not me agreeing with this, they say, benefits of digital ID card. According to Tony Blair's sort of left-wing think tank that wants to introduce digital ID cards and has done since 2009, they say a digital ID card would allow additional verification checks on welfare claimants, cutting benefit fraud by £1.25 billion a year. On the face of it, that sounds like a good thing, but should they not already know who it is that's claiming this welfare in the first place? Do they not already do the checks as to who it is that's claiming the money before they pay the money out? Don't they go through a whole verification of who they are and what they're claiming for in the first place? Because, okay, there is a degree of fraud across the board. There always will be, but there will be with digital ID. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Secondly, they say it will cut identity-related fraud in the financial sector by £350 million a year. Well, I beg to differ, because if people are defrauding the financial sector, this isn't just going to magically stop overnight because they roll out a digital ID. Because the only way it's going to absolutely prevent fraud is if absolutely everyone has a digital ID and absolutely everyone is prevented from doing anything financial or otherwise without this ID card. Thus, it follows that there will always be some level of fraud and they're always going to find ways around it. Worse still, they may well use this digital ID fraudulently by way of changing their name, fake names. After all, we've had criminals disappearing off police radar because they simply changed their name. Maybe that's why the government the other day put out a thing to say, to change your name, you need to use deed poll, which is not true. You can use a statutory declaration to change your name and follow the requisite procedure for a statutory declaration to change your name, and then you can use that to obtain a new passport, new driving license, and so on. Maybe that's why the government's lost track of so many people. Now, before you say it, no, they can't stop you from changing your name either. I mean, for one, people get married all the time, and two, people just decide to change their name. That is their right to do so. They can do so by way of deed poll or statutory declaration. So, no, ID-related fraud is probably not, in my opinion, going to decrease all that much. They go on to say digital ID cards will boost tax revenue by pre-populating tax returns. I've got my thoughts about this one. This would, quote, save citizens time whilst helping to avoid tax filing errors that cost the Exchequer several £billion a year. Now, I can tell you as a lawyer, we have had experience where people have been correct in their filings and HMRC has been incorrect in their assessment of things, levied fines where they weren't warranted, even levying fines for returns that have been filed correctly and on time, and they said that it was late, and they assumed that it was for the previous year when it wasn't. Imagine if everything is pre-populated. Let's be frank, how on earth are they going to pre-populate everybody's tax returns just because you have a digital ID? Following that through, that would mean that they have to have your digital ID linked to your employer, to your business bank accounts, or anything of that sort where they make the the best guess, whether it's by AI or anything else, any other kind of computer machinery generated figures, to pre-populate your tax returns. With the greatest respect to anybody designing that system, that is going to be an absolute nightmare for millions of people for whom this is going to be incorrectly populated. And if they go an extra step and say, well, we've pre-calculated it so we can just take the money from your bank account, and it's wrong, what if they get an extra zero on the end by mistake? Or they've just miscalculated large chunks of payments and assumed that you need to pay tax on those when there's some obscure reason you don't. For example, let's say you've done tens of thousands of pounds worth of refurb work on a property, and thus you can offset that against tax, but the system doesn't see that, because how would it know, and just bills you the tax for the money that you're not supposed to pay tax on. And thus you could be tens of thousands of pounds down, especially if they then go a step further and take it from your account. Believe me, this will be government overreach. But speaking of getting things accurate and keeping an accurate contemporaneous record or note of conversations and things done and said, you might remember some time ago that I talked to you about an AI device that would record, transcribe. That was called the Claude Note. But I'm really pleased to tell you that it's now been upgraded to the Claude Note Pro, which is slim, elegant, and absolutely lightweight, that you can connect it to the back of your phone and you simply won't notice it. But one of the really cool features about it is that now you can take photographs, press a little button to highlight a certain bit of the conversation, and the AI will process that photograph and come back to that section of the recording so that you never miss a thing. Also, whether you're in a meeting or on a telephone call, not only will it separate each of the speakers involved, but you can also tell it to flag up a certain piece of information and simplify and condense very complex conversations into simple to-do lists or a mind map. There are even over 3,000 different templates or custom templates that you can use to make all of your work more efficient. The really neat thing about the Claude Note Pro is that it's powered by Claude Intelligence, which is an advanced AI system built on top of leading models like ChatGPT and Claude. Claude Intelligence can remember your preferences over the long term. You can customize suggestions for smarter insights. So instead of scrolling through all your notes, you can just ask Claude to summarize the last meeting, make you a to-do list, summarize the bullet points, or you can simply ask to find a certain bit of information so that you don't have to scroll through all of your notes. It will automatically detect whether you're on a phone call or in a face-to-face meeting and switch modes for you using 4 built-in microphones and intelligent noise reduction. It will pick up voices clearly from 5 meters away, even in noisy rooms, with crystal clear detail. Transferring the files afterwards, I've tested, is super fast whether you use Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or a wired connection. The battery life lasts up to 50 hours, 50 hours of continuous recording with 60 days of standby. And if you lose it by chance, you can find it with Apple Find My Devices. Most importantly, your privacy and data are all fully secured. Claude complies with all the relevant security protocols, ensuring that your recordings, your photos, and all your notes are encrypted and secure so that you can confidently use them for sensitive client work. So if you want to work more efficiently, accurately, and securely, not missing any detail from any conversation or telephone call, check out Claude at the links in the description below. They go on and say HMRC will be better to target tax compliance activity, cracking down on all sorts of things. Same argument. There could be perfectly legitimate setups that they then deem to be unlawful and then take steps against you for it. And this goes on and on. But I could give you a ream of different reasons why this is not a good idea. But before I do that, I'm going to check back in on my poll here, because it was just under 3,000. Now it's just over 3,000 just a few minutes later. We're still at 96% say absolutely no way. This is not a good idea. Okay, so now to this video of Yvette Cooper trying to justify why she thinks that this digital ID is such a good idea. Take a listen to this.
Of course, because there are other benefits in other departments.
So I think our clear focus is around being able to ensure that we've got proper rules being respected and enforced in the immigration system and in the asylum system as well, that we can make sure that if that there is evidence if people are not here lawfully or they are not working lawfully, we can get that information. We can actually make sure we can take the much stronger action to prevent that kind of abuse of the system taking place. There are then wider considerations for the for DSIT on making sure that you've all.
So one of the primary reasons they're pushing digital ID, they say, is to control illegal migration and preventing them from working illegally. Well, again, as I said, whilst illegal working may be rife in certain places and certain industries, that is very much down to the employers to ensure that that doesn't happen. Any of us going to work at a company can probably produce either a passport, a driving license, or some other form of documentation, including proof of address, a utility bill, or something of that nature that can prove who you are and where you live. We don't need a digital ID to do that. But again, their argument that this is going to somehow prevent illegal migration and prevent illegal migrants from working rests on the fact that every single employer would have to enroll in this digital ID scheme and thus not employ anybody unless they have a digital ID. And that is the only way that it's going to work across the board to ensure that it catches in the net those relatively few illegal migrants that are trying to work in the country illegally. And therefore, what are they going to do about it? Iron out the problem by still relying on the employers reporting that they've got someone unlawfully working for them, which will probably still happen regardless of digital ID. Because of course, if it's all cash in hand and evading the system one way or another, it will still happen. It will still go forward. But let's see what else she has to say.
Also got secure standards, secure underpinning for people to be able to use digital ID, whether it be online and so on as well. So there's wider considerations there.
So she's talking about making sure that everybody can get onto digital ID. Well, I mean, at the moment, it is not exactly difficult for people to do what they do. Let's take, for example, at the moment, people already have seamless access to tax and government gateway to file accounts and returns and such things. Companies, if not being on the self-assessment route, people could already file their own taxes and other government filings. They could already file police reports. They could already contact doctors and book appointments through the NHS app or with their own doctor's surgery system or whatever that might be. There are really no significant gaps in the system that requires a universal across the board digital ID that would outweigh the negative impacts of having government overreach into every aspect of your private life. Think of it. If you had a digital ID or you had to have a digital ID so that they've got some level of access or control or oversight to your bank account, your mobile phone, your whereabouts, your location, where you work, where you study, where you're traveling to, any gym that you're a membership of, any shop that you shop at, potentially what it is that you shop for. And then broader, what if there's a data breach? Or what if they decide to sell your data? Because suddenly some enterprising genius in the government realizes that the data points that they could capture on 69.23 million people in the UK, according to Google as of last year, 69 million people in the UK with separate data points on where they bank, where they travel, where they shop, what they do, how they travel, what they pay for travel, and anything else that this digital ID is going to be a mandatory requirement for. That then becomes a valuable data set, which I guarantee at some point they will want to sell because they'll realize that it's valuable. I'm going to come on to money and where they're supposedly saving money and yet spending money in just a moment. But first, we're not quite done with this video. Listen to this.
We do work with DSIT on all of the issues around the online crime and online abuse and online exploitation. So there is a lot of cross-government working. And I think part of the issue here is making sure that you can develop systems that can evolve over time to be used in the most effective way.
That to me sounds really dangerous. That sounds like they are suggesting a system, as she just said, that could evolve over time, which would then morph into other services, other systems. It would spread across the internet, across different services, NHS, driving licenses, vehicles, passports, school, travel, shops, banks, you name it, they will want to roll it out. You'll remember my previous video talking about company ID for company directors, where they are mandating ID for directors. That is where they start. That is how they catch you. They just say you cannot file these things unless you have digital ID. And yet they're talking about reasons for it to be saving money. And yet at the same time, we have quotes from The Guardian like this. Ed Miliband says Labour will honour the pledge of £11.6 billion in overseas climate aid. And as James Melville quite rightly said here, no one voted for this. They didn't. And speaking of wasted money, it now comes to light that we are wasting a huge amount of money on asylum seekers, ferrying them by taxi to and from doctor's appointments. Whilst many people complain that they cannot get a doctor's appointment, we are spending, let's take a look, £600 for one asylum seeker to do a 250-mile journey to visit a GP, telling the driver to cost the journey back to their home office. They are apparently issued with a bus pass for one return journey a week, but for any other necessary travel, such as doctor's appointments, they call a cab. The BBC asked the government for how much it spends on taxis via Freedom of Information request. The Home Office said it doesn't keep these figures, doesn't know how much it spends. The File on 4 investigation reported asylum seekers must now show proof of upcoming appointments at the reception desk of the hotel, where a taxi is booked on an automated system. Public transport or walking is not presented as an option. So whilst many people are struggling to get a doctor's appointment, they walk up, just book it on an automated system. And the fact that they now say that they need proof that they have an appointment suggests to me that they were previously going up and just booking a journey anywhere and getting it paid for by the Home Office, the taxpayer. And this report then says this can result in some unusually long journeys and others that are unusually short. What is that, sort of getting a cab to cross the street? What's the phrase? And it says, for instance, when migrants move between hotels, they sometimes keep the same NHS doctors, especially for GP referrals. So if they're moved across the country, 250 miles away, yes, you guessed it, they are paid a cab to get them back to the GP from once they were first registered. Work and Pensions Secretary Pat McFadden told the BBC that he'd agreed that there should be an investigation into how the system works. I'm not surprised that this was a feature that caught people's eye. So if they want to look at saving money, I suggest this is one way about doing it, rather than mandating everybody joins a digital ID. And just before I leave you for the video, back to my poll now. We are just around the 4,000 votes mark, with 96% still saying no, absolutely not. So with respect, I don't think that this headline is accurate. Public backs super ID card? I think not. Let me know what you think in the comments, please. And as always, thank you for watching.